The alarm shrieked through the sterile corridors of Blackwater Defense Technologies at 11:47 p.m., its piercing wail cutting through the silence like a blade. Dr. Elena Vasquez froze mid-step, her mop bucket sloshing as emergency lights bathed the hallway in hellish red. She had exactly 13 seconds before the security protocols locked down the building. Elena abandoned the mop and sprinted toward the classified wing, her worn sneakers silent against the polished floor. 23 years of cleaning these halls had taught her every shortcut, every blind spot in the security cameras, every weakness in what the engineers thought was an impenetrable facility. The steel blast doors began their slow descent with a mechanical groan that sent ice through her veins. She dove beneath the gap with 2 seconds to spare, rolling into the restricted corridor as the barrier slammed shut behind her. With the finality of a coffin lid, getting in had been the easy part. Now came the impossible. The X-47 ghost $1 billion of cutting-edge stealth technology sat in the hangar bay. Like a metallic predator, tomorrow it would begin its maiden test flight, carrying prototype weapons systems that could shift the balance of global power. But Elena knew something the engineers didn't, something that would turn their triumph into catastrophe. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number she'd memorized but never called. "This is Agent Martinez, Intelligence. You're not supposed to have this number, Agent Martinez," Elena whispered, crouching behind a tool cart as footsteps echoed in the distance. "This is Dr. Elena Vasquez. I'm inside Blackwater Defense, and you need to listen very carefully. Someone has sabotaged the ghost." A pause. "Dr. Vasquez? You mean the janitor, ma'am. This line is for, I have a PhD in aerospace engineering from MIT and 15 years of classified research experience with Lockheed Skunk Works. I've been undercover at Blackwater for 2 years investigating arms trafficking, and in approximately 6 hours, their test flight is going to kill everyone on board unless you help me stop it." The footsteps were getting closer. Elena could hear radio chatter. Security was conducting a sweep. "Prove it," Martinez said. Tersely, Elena rattled off her DOD clearance codes from memory, followed by technical specifications for the X-47's propulsion system that weren't public knowledge. She heard Martinez typing rapidly. "Jesus Christ, your file is substantial." "Okay, Dr. Vasquez, I'm listening. What kind of sabotage?" "The flight control software has been compromised. Someone inserted code that will trigger a catastrophic failure. During the weapons test, the plane will crash into the Pacific Fleet exercises, taking out 3 aircraft carriers and starting a war with China. Who's responsible?" Elena peered around the corner. 2 guards were methodically checking each room, their tactical lights sweeping the darkness. "I don't know yet, but they know I'm here. The alarm wasn't random. Someone triggered it to trap me inside. I'm going to try to reach the server room and stop the upload. But if something happens to me, Dr. Vasquez." Elena. The line went dead. One of the guards had spotted her. "Hey, you, stop right there." Elena ran. 3 hours earlier, Elena had been just another invisible face in the sea of maintenance workers that kept Blackwater Defense functioning. She'd perfected the art of being overlooked: hunched shoulders, tired expression, the kind of practiced exhaustion that made people's eyes slide past her without recognition. But invisibility had been her greatest asset. For 23 months, she'd watched, she'd listened, she'd collected evidence of illegal arms sales, corporate espionage, and defense contract fraud that would bring down half the military-industrial complex. Tonight was supposed to be her final data collection before extracting and turning everything over to DOD Intelligence. Instead, she'd discovered something that changed everything. It started with a conversation she wasn't supposed to hear. While cleaning the executive washroom, she'd noticed voices from the adjoining conference room, voices that should have been gone hours ago. Through the thin wall, she'd heard 3 distinct speakers: CEO Jonathan Blackwater, CFO Sarah Chen, and a third voice with a slight accent she couldn't immediately place. "The ghost's maiden flight is tomorrow," Blackwater was saying. "Everything is on schedule, and the modifications to the flight software," the accented voice, "complete. The aircraft will experience a malfunction. Precisely 14 minutes into the weapons demonstration, The crash will appear to be pilot error tragic. But these things happen with experimental aircraft. Elena's blood had turned to ice. She pressed closer to the wall, straining to hear. The insurance payout alone will be substantial, Chen added. But more importantly, the failure will give us justification to scrap the entire Ghost program and pivot to the new joint venture with Tianlong Industries. Tianlong Industries, Chinese defense contractors. Excellent, the accented voice said. My government will be most pleased. The Pacific Fleet exercises provide the perfect cover. When the Ghost crashes into the carrier group, both our nations will have what we need to justify the new arms agreements. Elena had needed to hear more, but movement in the hallway forced her to retreat. She'd spent the next hour in a supply closet, frantically researching the flight path and weapons test schedule on her encrypted phone. The truth was worse than she'd imagined. The X-47 Ghost's test flight would take it directly over the Pacific Fleet's live-fire exercises. If the sabotaged aircraft crashed into the assembled naval forces, the resulting explosion would kill thousands and be interpreted as either an attack or an act of war. China and the United States would be at each other's throats within hours. But Blackwater and his co-conspirators would profit from both sides of the conflict. Elena had tried to leave the building then, to get the information to her handlers before. It was too late, but the moment she approached the exit, alarms began screaming throughout the facility. Someone had been watching her watch them. Now, racing through the corridors with security in pursuit, Elena realized she'd stumbled into something far larger than corporate fraud. This was an international conspiracy designed to start a war, and she was the only one who could stop it. The emergency lighting cast twisted shadows as she darted between support pillars in the main assembly area. The X-47 Ghost loomed before her, its angular stealth profile giving it an almost alien appearance under the red illumination. Somewhere behind her, she could hear boots on metal and the crackle of radio communications. Elena reached the maintenance scaffolding and began to climb. The server room was 3 levels up, accessible only through a maintenance shaft that even the security team might not know about. If she could reach it, she might be able to access the flight control systems and purge the sabotaged code. Might being the operative word. A gunshot rang out, the bullet sparking off the metal railing inches from her hand. Elena looked down to see one of the guards taking aim for a second shot. Dr. Elena Vasquez. A voice echoed through the hangar's PA system. This is CEO Jonathan Blackwater. I know you can hear me. You've caused us quite a bit of trouble tonight. Elena kept climbing, her hands slick with sweat. You should have minded your own business, Elena. 23 years of faithful service. And this is how you repay us. Breaking into restricted areas, stealing classified information. What do you think will happen next? Share your predictions in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling stories. Another gunshot. This one closer. I know what you think you heard tonight, Blackwater continued. But you're misunderstanding the situation. The Ghost program is perfectly safe. There's no sabotage. There's no conspiracy. There's just a very troubled woman who's been living a lie for far too long. Elena reached the 3rd level and could see the server room access panel. Her hands shook as she entered the maintenance code she'd memorized months ago. The panel beeped twice and turned. Red dot access denied. The thing is, Elena. Blackwater's voice had taken on a conversational tone that somehow made it more terrifying. We've known who you really are for quite some time. Dr. Elena Vasquez. Mid-graduate, former Lockheed researcher, current DoD intelligence asset. Did you really think you could infiltrate Blackwater Defense Technologies without us knowing? Elena's mind raced. If they'd known all along, then everything her cover, her investigation, her evidence. We've been feeding you information, Elena. Carefully selected pieces of intelligence designed to make you think you were uncovering a conspiracy. The arms trafficking. We made sure you found those shipping manifests. The defense contract fraud. We left those documents where you'd discover them. All of it carefully orchestrated to keep you busy while we completed our real work. The access panel beeped again, still red. But tonight, you overheard something you weren't supposed to hear. A conversation that was very real, very secret. and very dangerous to people far more powerful than a janitor with a stolen PhD. Elena tried a different maintenance code. The panel flashed yellow partially accepted. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to come down from there, and we're going to have a conversation about your future. Because Elena, despite everything, we still need you. Need me for what? Elena called out, buying time as she worked through possible code combinations to take the fall. The panel turned green. Elena yanked open the access hatch and squeezed into the maintenance shaft just as footsteps thundered up the scaffolding behind her. The maintenance shaft was a claustrophobic nightmare of pipes, conduits, and recycled air that tasted of metal and desperation. Elena crawled through the narrow space, guided only by the faint glow of emergency lighting filtering through ventilation grates. Behind her, she could hear the security team forcing open access panels, their flashlight beams cutting through the darkness like searching fingers. They were gaining ground. The server room lay at the end of a particularly tight section, where the shaft narrowed to accommodate the building's main power distribution system. Elena had to remove her jacket and squeeze through sideways, the metal edges scraping against her shoulders and back. Finally, she reached the server room access grate. Through the metal slats, she could see rows of black server towers humming with activity, the digital heart of Blackwater Defense Technologies. Somewhere in those machines was the code that would doom the X-47 Ghost and trigger an international incident. Elena carefully removed the grate and dropped into the room. The air was cooler here, kept at optimal temperature for the servers, and the constant hum of cooling fans provided audio cover for her movements. She approached the central terminal and logged in using system administrator credentials she'd harvested during her months of reconnaissance. The screen flickered to life, displaying a directory structure that would have been incomprehensible to most people. But Elena wasn't most people. She navigated through layers of security folders until she found what she was looking for, the X-47 flight control system. The legitimate code was there, clean and properly documented, but buried within it, disguised as routine maintenance protocols, was something else entirely. Elena's fingers flew across the keyboard as she traced the malicious code through the system. It was elegant in its simplicity, a logic bomb designed to trigger precisely 14 minutes into the weapons demonstration phase of the test flight. When activated, it would override the pilot's controls and send the aircraft into a terminal dive toward the coordinates of the Pacific Fleet exercises. But as she worked to isolate and remove the sabotaged code, Elena began to notice something disturbing. The modifications weren't just designed to crash the plane, they were designed to make it look like a deliberate attack. The Ghost would transmit false targeting data just before impact, data that would appear to show Chinese military frequencies and weapons signatures. To any forensic investigation, it would look like the aircraft had been compromised by foreign agents and used as a weapon against the U.S. Navy. Elena realized with growing horror that Blackwater's plan was even more sophisticated than she'd thought. They weren't just starting a war, they were engineering the perfect justification for it. Dr. Vasquez. Elena spun around to find Sarah Chen standing in the doorway, flanked by two security guards. The CFO's usual professional demeanor had been replaced by something cold and calculating. "Step away from the terminal, please, Sarah. You have to listen to me," Elena said, keeping her hands visible but staying close to the keyboard. "I know what you're planning. The Ghost, the sabotage, the war. You can still stop this." Chen smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You really don't understand, do you? This isn't about corporate profits or international politics. This is about survival." Survival? Blackwater Defense Technologies has been hemorrhaging money for 3 years. The Ghost program has cost us everything: our liquid assets, our credit lines, our investor confidence. If the Ghost succeeds, we'll make a modest profit and continue limping along. But if it fails catastrophically, Chen gestured to one of the guards, who raised his weapon, the insurance payout will be $12 billion. The war that follows will generate defense contracts worth hundreds of billions, and Blackwater Defense Technologies will emerge as the primary contractor for both sides of the conflict. Elena's fingers found the delete key, and thousands of people will die. People die in wars anyway, Elena. At least this way, their deaths will serve a purpose. What purpose? Making you rich, making America strong. Chen's voice carried a fanatical edge. China is going to surpass us militarily within the decade. This conflict will set them back 20 years and cement American dominance for another generation. We're patriots, Elena. We're doing what our government is too weak to do. Elena's thumb hovered over the delete key. One press would purge the malicious code and save the ghost. But Chen was watching her carefully, and the guards had their weapons trained on her center mass. Here's what's going to happen, Chen continued. You're going to step away from that terminal and allow the ghost to proceed as planned. In exchange, we'll make you very, very wealthy. A numbered account in the Caymans, enough money to disappear. Forever, and if I refuse, then you'll be found dead in this server room tomorrow morning. A victim of corporate espionage gone wrong. The official story will be that Chinese agents infiltrated the facility and killed you while attempting to steal ghost technology. It will make for excellent propaganda. Elena looked at the screen, at the lines of code that would condemn thousands of innocent people to death. Then she looked at Chen's cold, calculating expression. I have a counter-proposal, Elena said that before Chen could respond. Elena slammed her palm down on the delete key and dove sideways as the guards opened fire. The server towers exploded in showers of sparks as bullets tore through their cases. Elena rolled behind a rack of backup drives as automatic weapons fire filled the air. With the smell of ozone and burning electronics, "Stop shooting," Chen screamed. "You'll destroy everything." But the damage was already done. Warning lights flashed throughout the server room as primary systems went offline. Elena had managed to delete most of the malicious code, but in the chaos, she couldn't tell if she'd gotten all of it through the gunfire and sparks. She heard Chen shouting into a radio, "Code red, lock down the entire facility. No one gets in or out." Elena realized with sinking certainty that even if she'd stopped the sabotage, she was trapped inside a building with people who would kill to protect their secret. And somewhere outside, the sunrise was approaching along with the ghost's scheduled test flight. The question was whether her partial deletion had been enough to save the aircraft, or whether she'd only delayed the inevitable. A new voice crackled through the building's PA system, not Blackwater this time, but someone with authority and anger. "This is Colonel James Morrison, U.S. Air Force. Blackwater Defense Technologies is now under federal investigation. Surrender immediately or face the consequences." Elena smiled grimly as she huddled behind the server rack. Her call to Agent Martinez had gotten through after all, but her relief was short-lived. Through the smoke and emergency lighting, she could see Chen speaking urgently into her radio. "Initiate Protocol 7, Chen was saying. "All evidence, everything." Elena's blood ran cold. Protocol 7 could only mean one thing: they were going to destroy the building and everyone in it. The explosion that rocked the eastern wing of Blackwater Defense Technologies could be felt 3 miles away. Elena was thrown against the server rack as the building shuddered, emergency lighting flickering as dust rained from the ceiling. Chen was systematically destroying evidence. Elena's phone buzzed with an encrypted text from Agent Martinez. "Federal agents 2 minutes out. Can you reach the hangar? 2 minutes might as well have been 2 hours. Elena was trapped in a server room filling with smoke, surrounded by armed security guards, in a building that was apparently rigged for demolition. The hangar bay where the ghost waited was on the opposite side of the facility, but she had to try. Elena grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall and pulled the pin. The guards were repositioning themselves around the server room, trying to get a clear shot without damaging more equipment. She waited until they were clustered near the doorway, then hurled the extinguisher into the nearest server rack. The impact triggered the extinguisher's discharge mechanism, filling the air with white chemical foam. In the chaos and reduced visibility, Elena sprinted for the secondary exit she'd memorized during her reconnaissance and emergency egress that led directly to the facility's main corridor. She could hear Chen screaming orders behind her as she ran, but the words were lost in the building's alarm systems and the distant sound of helicopters approaching. The corridor was filled with smoke from the eastern wing explosion. Elena pulled her shirt over her nose and mouth as she navigated by memory toward the hangar bay. Her lungs burned, and her eyes streamed tears, but she forced herself to keep moving. Another explosion, this one closer. The lights went out completely, leaving only the red glow of emergency systems. Elena's phone rang. "Martinez, Elena. Status report. Buildings rigged for demolition." She shouted over the noise. "Chen's destroying everything. I need to reach the hangar. Negative. Federal teams are breaching the main entrance. Evacuate immediately. The Ghost. If there's any sabotage code left in the system, the test flight will still happen. I have to." The line went dead as another explosion shook the building. This one was directly above her, and Elena realized with growing horror that she was trapped between the demolition charges and the approaching federal agents. She reached the hangar bay doors to find them sealed by the security lockdown. The electronic access panel was dead, its screen black. But Elena had spent 2 years studying this building's weaknesses, and she knew there was always a manual override. She found the emergency release mechanism hidden behind the maintenance panel and yanked the manual lever. The massive doors began to groan open with agonizing slowness, revealing the X-47 Ghost in all its menacing glory. The aircraft sat on its launch platform, sleek and deadly in the emergency lighting. Pre-flight diagnostics were already running somehow, despite the chaos in the building. The automated systems were preparing for the scheduled test flight. Elena sprinted toward the Ghost's maintenance access ladder. If any sabotage code remained in the flight computer, she might be able to access it directly from the aircraft systems. "Dr. Vasquez." She turned to see Colonel Morrison and a team of federal agents streaming into the hangar bay, their tactical lights cutting through the smoky air. "Colonel, the aircraft's been sabotaged. There's malicious code in the flight control system." Morrison spoke rapidly into his radio as his team secured the hangar. "This is Morrison. Emergency abort of Ghost test flight. Repeat, emergency abort." Elena climbed the maintenance ladder and popped the Ghost's computer access panel. The flight control system was active, running through its pre-mission checklist. She plugged in her phone and began downloading the current software configuration. "Elena." Martinez's voice from below. "The building's going to come down. We need to evacuate." 2 minutes, Elena called back, her fingers flying across her phone's interface as she analyzed the Ghost's code. "I need to verify the sabotage is completely removed." What she found made her blood freeze. The malicious code was still there, not in the flight control system, but in the weapon's targeting computer. Her deletion in the server room had missed it because it was stored in a separate, isolated system. In 90 minutes, when the Ghost began its test flight, the sabotage targeting system would override the pilot's controls and send the aircraft straight into the Pacific Fleet. "Colonel," Elena shouted, "the test flight has to be canceled. The weapons system is still compromised." Morrison climbed the ladder to join her. "Show me." Elena pointed to the lines of malicious code on her phone screen. "This will trigger 14 minutes into the flight, right over the fleet exercises. It'll look like a deliberate attack on our own ships." Morrison's face went pale as he realized the implications. He grabbed his radio. "Command. This is Morrison. Code red aboard on Ghost test flight. Aircraft is compromised. Repeat, do not launch." The radio crackled with static, then a voice Elena recognized. "Jonathan Blackwater." "Negative. Colonel, Ghost launch proceeds as scheduled. Test flight has presidential authorization and cannot be canceled without direct White House approval." "Sir, I'm telling you the aircraft has been sabotaged." "Colonel Morrison, you are interfering with a classified defense program based on the word of a suspected foreign agent. Dr. Vasquez has been under investigation for espionage for 6 months." Elena stared at Morrison in shock. "That's a lie. I'm intelligence. According to our files," Blackwater continued over the radio, "Elena Vasquez is a Chinese intelligence operative who has been using her position to steal military secrets. Her claims of sabotage are an obvious attempt to disrupt critical defense testing." Morrison looked between Elena and his radio, uncertainty flickering across his face. "Colonel," Elena said urgently, "check my clearance codes. Call my handler." At Dot Intelligence, verify my identity. But Morrison was already stepping back, his hand moving toward his sidearm. Dr. Vasquez, I need you to step away from the aircraft and place your hands where I can see them. Elena realized with dawning horror that Blackwater's conspiracy was even deeper than she'd imagined. They'd been preparing for this moment, building a false identity for her as a foreign agent, discrediting her before she could expose their plan. The tension is building. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and let me know in the comments which character you're rooting for. Your support helps me create more incredible stories like this one. Colonel, please, Elena said, raising her hands but staying close to the ghost's computer. In 1 hour and 27 minutes, this aircraft is going to take off with sabotage targeting software. It will crash into the Pacific Fleet and kill thousands of American sailors. Everything else my identity. The espionage charges, none of that matters if we don't stop this flight. Morrison hesitated, torn between his orders and the urgency. In Elena's voice, that hesitation saved both their lives. The hangar bay exploded in gunfire as Blackwater's security team burst through the secondary entrances. Morrison dove for cover behind the Ghost's landing gear as bullets sparked off the aircraft's armored hull. Elena flattened herself against the Ghost's fuselage and continued working on the targeting computer. If she could isolate and delete the malicious code, the aircraft would be safe to fly, assuming any of them survived the next few minutes. Through the chaos of gunfire and shouting, she heard Blackwater's voice over the PA system one final time. Ghost, launch in T-minus 60 minutes and counting. All personnel clear the hangar bay for automated launch sequence. Elena's hands shook as she navigated through the targeting computer's code. The malicious program was more sophisticated than she'd realized. It wasn't just designed to crash the plane, but to transmit false data that would frame China for the attack. But as bullets flew around her and the countdown continued, Elena began to understand something that changed everything. The Ghost wasn't just a weapon, it was a message. And the message was about to start a war that would reshape the world. 45 minutes to launch, the automated voice announced as gunfire erupted across the hangar bay. Elena pressed herself against the Ghost's hull, her fingers still working frantically on the aircraft's targeting computer, while bullets ricocheted off the stealth fighter's armored skin. Colonel Morrison had taken cover behind a tool cart, returning fire against Blackwater's security team. But they were outnumbered 3-1, and more importantly, they were running out of time. Elena's phone screen showed the Ghost's targeting system. In all its complexity, thousands of lines of code governing weapons deployment, navigation, and target acquisition. Buried within the legitimate programming was the malicious payload, disguised as a routine navigation subroutine. But as she studied the sabotaged code more closely, Elena realized something that made her blood run cold. This wasn't just about starting a war between the United States and China. The targeting modifications were far more specific than that. The Ghost would crash into the USS Gerald R, the Navy's newest and most advanced aircraft carrier, carrying experimental weapons systems worth billions of dollars. And according to the ship's manifest, which Elena accessed through her DOD clearance, the Ford was hosting a classified summit of Pacific Fleet commanders, including Admiral Sarah Chen. Elena's hands froze on her phone. Admiral Sarah Chen, the same last name as Blackwater's CFO. Colonel, Elena shouted over the gunfire, I need you to check something. Admiral Sarah Chen, is she related to anyone at Blackwater Defense? Morrison looked at her like she'd lost her mind. Elena, we're under fire. This isn't the time for, it's exactly the time. Check the family connections. Morrison reluctantly pulled out his secure tablet and ran a quick personnel search while Elena continued working on the targeting computer. His face went pale as he read the results. Sarah Chen, CFO of Blackwater Defense Technologies, is the sister of Admiral Sarah Chen, commander of the Pacific Fleet. The pieces fell into place with terrifying clarity. This wasn't just corporate greed or international conspiracy, this was fratricide on a national scale. Elena's phone buzzed with an incoming call from Agent Martinez. She answered while still working on the code. Elena, we've got federal agents surrounding the building, but Blackwater's people have barricaded themselves in. Status on the Ghost, Martinez. Listen carefully. The sabotage targets the USS Gerald R specifically. Admiral Chen is on board that ship right now, and her sister is the one behind the attack. This is personal. Sarah Chen is going to murder her own sister and frame China for it. That's impossible. Why would she? Check the insurance. Beneficiaries. Check who inherits Admiral Chen's estate. Elena could hear Martinez typing frantically. After a moment, he came back on the line with shock in his voice. Jesus Christ. Sarah Chen is the sole beneficiary of a $50 million life insurance policy on her sister. But Elena, that's not the worst part. What do you mean? Admiral Chen isn't just attending a summit on the Ford. She's scheduled to announce the Navy's decision on next-generation stealth fighter procurement. The Ghost program is competing against a Chinese joint venture proposal. Elena's mind raced. If the Ghost crashes into the Ford and kills Admiral Chen, who makes the procurement decision? It would fall to, oh God, it would fall to the Seknev's designated alternate, who according to this file is Sarah Chen, Elena whispered. She's not just CFO of Blackwater Defense. She's also a retired Navy commander with procurement authority. The automated countdown continued, 30 minutes to launch. Elena redoubled her efforts on the targeting computer, but the malicious code was protected by multiple layers of encryption. She needed more time, and time was the one thing they didn't have. Morrison, she called out, can your people delay the launch? Negative. The launch sequence is automated and encrypted. Once it begins, only a direct abort code from the White House can stop it. Elena realized they were fighting the wrong battle. Instead of trying to prevent the launch, she needed to reprogram the aircraft while it was in flight. But that would require access to the Ghost secure communication systems that were controlled from Blackwater's main server room, the same server room where she'd been trapped and nearly killed an hour ago. I have to get back to the server room, Elena announced. Morrison stared at her. Elena, that's suicide. The building's rigged for demolition, and Chen's people control that entire section. It's the only way. I can't fully purge the targeting system from here, but if I can access the aircraft's command and control network remotely, I can override the sabotage while the Ghost is airborne. Elena pocketed her phone and moved toward the hangar bay's maintenance exit. The shooting had intensified, with federal agents now engaging Blackwater's security team from multiple angles. Elena, wait. Martinez's voice crackled through her phone. We're tracking multiple explosions throughout the building. Chen is destroying everything. She's going to bring down the entire facility. Elena paused at the exit. Through the smoke and chaos, she could see the Ghost sitting serenely on its launch platform, its systems methodically preparing for takeoff. In 28 minutes, it would lift off and begin its journey toward mass murder. But as she prepared to leave the relative safety of the hangar bay, Elena heard something that stopped her cold. Sarah Chen's voice, coming through the building's PA system with the tone of someone who had already won. Dr. Elena Vasquez. Chen's voice echoed through the facility. I know you can hear me, and I know what you're thinking. You believe you can still stop this. You believe you can save your precious Admiral Chen and prevent a war. Elena pressed herself against the wall, listening. But what you don't understand, Elena, is that the war has already begun. 3 hours ago, Chinese naval forces began aggressive maneuvers in the South China Sea. 2 hours ago, cyber attacks attributed to Chinese military hackers disrupted communications across the Pacific Fleet. 1 hour ago, intercepted communications suggested Chinese forces were planning a preemptive strike against American naval assets. Elena's heart sank. She's creating the narrative. The Ghost's crash into the Gerald R won't start a war, Elena. It will finish one that's already started. American forces are already preparing for conflict. The death of Admiral Chen will simply provide the final justification for total war. Elena realized that even if she stopped the Ghost, even if she saved the Admiral's life, the larger conspiracy might already be unstoppable. Chen had been playing a game with a much longer timeline and much higher stakes than Elena had imagined. But I'm a reasonable woman, Chen continued. Surrender now, and I'll ensure your death is quick and painless. Continue to interfere, And I'll make sure you watch Gerald R. Ford burn before I kill you." Elena looked back at the ghost, its sleek form, almost beautiful in the emergency lighting. Then she looked at her phone, at the partial code she'd managed to extract from the targeting computer. She had a choice: retreat and let thousands die, or advance into almost certain death for a slim chance of stopping a war Elena had spent 2 years invisible, ignored, overlooked. But tonight, she was the only person standing between Sarah Chen and global catastrophe. She chose to advance. 25 minutes to launch, the automated voice announced as Elena disappeared into the smoke-filled corridors of Blackwater Defense Technologies. The server room was a war zone. Emergency lighting cast twisted shadows through the smoke as Elena picked her way through the debris of her earlier escape. Bullet holes peppered the server towers, and pools of chemical foam from the fire suppression system made the floor treacherous. But the primary servers were still operational. Elena approached the central terminal, her hands shaking as she logged into the system. 22 minutes until launch. Even if she could access the Ghost's command network, she would have less than half an hour to reprogram the aircraft's targeting system. While it was in flight, her fingers flew across the keyboard, navigating through layers of security to reach the aircraft communication protocols. The Ghost's encrypted command channel was protected by military-grade security, but Elena had spent 15 years working with similar systems at Lockheed. She found what she was looking for: a diagnostic backdoor that would allow her to push software updates to the aircraft during flight, but accessing it required administrator privileges that had been revoked. When the facility went into lockdown, Elena needed Sarah Chen's personal access codes. 18 minutes to launch. Elena pulled out her phone and called Martinez. "I need you to run a background check on Sarah Chen. Financial records, personal information, anything that might give me insight into her passwords." "Elena, where are you? We're tracking explosions throughout the building. Just run the check. I need those codes." While Martinez worked, Elena studied command network architecture. The Ghost's communication systems were designed to be hack-proof, but every system had vulnerabilities if you knew where to look. Her phone buzzed with an encrypted file from Martinez. Elena opened it to find Sarah Chen's complete financial profile, including bank accounts, credit cards, and investment portfolios. What she found made her sick. Chen had been positioning herself for this moment for over 3 years. Short positions against defense stocks that would collapse if war broke out. Long positions in rare earth metals and military contractors that would skyrocket. Insurance policies not just on her sister, but on dozens of high-ranking naval officers who would be at the summit on the Gerald R. Ford. Sarah Chen wasn't just planning to commit murder, she was planning to profit from genocide. Elena scrolled through the personal information, looking for clues to Chen's password choices. Birth dates, addresses, significant events, anything that might unlock the administrator account. 15 minutes to launch. Elena tried Chen's birthday, her sister's birthday, the founding date of Blackwater Defense. Nothing worked. She was running out of time and options. Then she found it. Buried in Chen's college transcripts, a master's thesis titled Asymmetric Warfare in the Information Age: How Small Actors Can Trigger Large Conflicts. Elena tried variations of words from the thesis title, Asymmetric Warfare 2019. Small actors, larger conflicts. On the third attempt, the system accepted trigger point 20 to 1 and granted her administrator access. Elena was in the Ghost's communication network unfolded before her like a digital map of destruction. She could see the aircraft's status in real time, engines warming up, flight control systems online, weapons bay loaded with dummy ordnance for the test. But buried within the targeting computer was the malicious code that would turn those dummy weapons into instruments of mass murder. 12 minutes to launch. Elena began uploading her counter-programming, a digital vaccine designed to neutralize Chen's sabotage. But the Ghost security systems were fighting her, treating her legitimate fixes as hostile intrusions. Red warning lights flashed across her screen as the aircraft's defensive protocols kicked in. Elena realized with growing desperation that Chen had anticipated this possibility. The sabotage code included countermeasures against exactly what Elena was trying to do. 10 minutes to launch. Elena's phone rang. Martinez again. Elena, Federal. Teams have breached the main facility. We're tracking Chen's location. She's in the executive conference room, 3 floors above you. Can you arrest her? She's barricaded in with hostages. But Elena, that's not why I'm calling. We've intercepted communications from the Pacific Fleet. Gerald R. Ford is reporting Chinese naval vessels approaching their position. Admiral Chen is considering calling off the summit. Elena's heart leaped. If the admiral left the ship, she would survive the Ghost's attack. But then Elena realized the horrible truth. Martinez, if Admiral Chen leaves the Ford, she'll order a general retreat of the Pacific Fleet. Chen's sabotage code will make the Ghost chase the retreating ships. It'll look like the Chinese are using stolen American technology to hunt down our Navy. Jesus Christ. How do we stop it? I'm trying to reprogram the targeting system, but the security protocols are blocking me. I need more time. 8 minutes to launch. Elena stared at her screen, watching her counter-programming struggle against Chen's sabotage. She was losing the digital battle, and thousands of lives hung in the balance. Then she heard footsteps in the corridor outside the server room. Elena ducked behind a server rack as the door opened. Sarah Chen entered, flanked by 2 armed guards. Her business suit somehow still immaculate despite the chaos around her. Dr. Elena Vasquez. Chen said calmly, still trying to save the world. I see. Elena remained hidden, her fingers still working on her phone, desperately trying to complete the programming upload. I have to admire your persistence, Chen continued, walking slowly through the server room. 23 years as a janitor, building your cover, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. It's really quite impressive. 6 minutes to launch. Elena realized Chen was stalling, keeping her talking until the launch sequence was irreversible. You want to know the beautiful part about this plan? Chen asked, her voice echoing off the server towers. Even if you stop the Ghost, the war will still happen. Those Chinese naval movements I mentioned, they're real. I've been feeding intelligence to both sides for months, convincing each that the other is preparing for an attack. Elena's counter-programming hit another firewall. She needed just 2 more minutes to complete the upload, but the Ghost would launch in 5. The crash of the Ghost will be the final trigger, but it's not the only trigger. I've built redundancy into this operation, multiple paths to the same destination. Elena made a decision that would either save thousands of lives or doom them all. She stood up from behind the server rack. Hello, Sarah, Elena said quietly. Chen smiled, but her eyes remained cold. Elena, still playing janitor, I see. Not anymore. Elena held up her phone, showing the progress bar of her counter-programming upload. For minutes. 17 seconds until your plan fails. Chen's smile faded. She gestured to her guards, who raised their weapons. You're too late, Elena. Even if you neutralize the targeting code, the Ghost will still crash. I've programmed multiple failure modes into the flight control system. The aircraft is doomed no matter what you do. For minutes to launch. Elena looked at her phone. The upload was 78% complete. She needed more time. Why your sister? Elena asked. Of all the people you could have targeted, why Admiral Chen? For the first time, emotion flickered across Sarah Chen's face. Because she was always the favorite, always the one who succeeded. Admiral Chen, the hero. Admiral Chen, the leader. Do you know what it's like to live in the shadow of someone who's supposedly your equal? Elena understood. This wasn't just about money or power, it was about sibling rivalry taken to genocidal extremes. She doesn't even know you exist, Elena said, keeping Chen talking while the upload continued. When was the last time you spoke to your sister? Shut up. 3 minutes to launch. 89% complete. You're going to kill thousands of innocent people because your sister got more attention, Elena pressed. That's what this is really about. I said shut up. Chen's composure cracked completely. You don't understand. She has everything. Command, authority, respect, a legacy that will outlive her. What do I have? A corporate title and a bank account. 96% complete. 2 minutes to launch. Elena made her move. She sprinted toward the exit as Chen's guards opened fire. Server towers exploding around her in showers of sparks and smoke. She could hear Chen screaming orders behind her as she reached the corridor. 99% complete. Elena's phone buzzed with a confirmation message. Upload successful. Ghost targeting system neutralized. But her relief was short-lived. Through the building's PA system, she could hear the automated launch sequence continuing its countdown. 1 minute to launch. Elena realized with sinking horror that Chen had been telling the truth. Even with the targeting system neutralized, the Ghost was still programmed to crash. She'd prevented the attack on the Admiral, but the aircraft would still be destroyed, and Chen would still profit from the chaos. Elena ran toward the hangar bay as the final countdown began. 30 seconds to launch. She burst into the hangar. Just as the Ghost's engines roared to life, the sleek aircraft was already moving toward the runway, its automated systems preparing for takeoff. 20 seconds. Elena spotted Colonel Morrison coordinating with federal agents near the control tower. She ran toward him, shouting over the engine noise. "Colonel, the targeting system is fixed, but the aircraft is still set to crash. You have to contact the pilot." Morrison grabbed his radio. "Ghost 1, this is ground control. Abort takeoff immediately. 10 seconds. The radio crackled with the pilot's voice. "Ground control. I'm reading normal system status. What's the nature of the abort?" 5 seconds. "Ghost 1, your aircraft has been sabotaged. Do not proceed with." The Ghost lifted off the runway with a thunderous roar, its sleek form disappearing into the dawn sky. Elena watched the aircraft vanish into the distance, carrying with it the fate of thousands of people. She'd neutralized the targeting system, but Chen's backup sabotage would still bring down the plane. Unless Elena grabbed Morrison's radio. "Ghost 1, this is Dr. Elena Vasquez. I'm going to walk you through disabling the sabotage system manually. Are you ready to copy?" The pilot's voice came back confused but professional. "Ma'am, I'm not sure who you are, but Ghost 1, Dr. Vasquez is .intelligence," Morrison interjected. "Follow her instructions." Elena looked at her phone, at the lines of code she'd studied for the past hour. She had one chance to save the Ghost and prevent Chen's war. "Ghost 1, I need you to access your flight computer's diagnostic menu as..." Elena began talking the pilot through the complex process of manually purging the sabotage code. She could see Sarah Chen being led away in handcuffs by federal agents. The CFO's face was a mask of rage and defeat, but the Ghost was still in danger, flying toward the Pacific Fleet with sabotaged flight controls, and Elena was the only person who could save it. The next 30 minutes would determine whether her 2 years of invisible service would end in triumph or tragedy. "Ghost 1, you need to access the flight computer's route directory," Elena said into the radio, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. 28 minutes until the Ghost reached the Pacific Fleet. 26 minutes until the sabotage. "Code activated." The pilot's voice crackled back through the radio. "Ma'am, I'm a test pilot, not a computer programmer. I need you to walk me through this step by step." Elena closed her eyes and visualized the Ghost's computer systems, drawing on 15 years of aerospace engineering experience. "Ghost 1, what's your name?" "Captain Lisa Rodriguez, ma'am." "Captain Rodriguez, I need you to trust me. My name is Dr. Elena Vasquez, and I've been working undercover for 2 years to prevent exactly what's happening right now. Your aircraft has been sabotaged by Blackwater Defense, and if we don't fix it in the next 25 minutes, it's going to crash into the Gerald R. Ford. A pause. Elena could imagine Rodriguez processing this information while flying a $2 billion aircraft at 30,000 feet. "Dr. Vasquez, are you telling me my plane is going to turn into a missile?" "That's exactly what I'm telling you. But we can stop it. Do you see the maintenance panel to the left of your primary flight display?" "Affirmative, open it." You'll see a small keyboard and screen labeled Flight Computer Access. Elena waited, listening to the sound of switches being flipped and panels opening. "I've got it, Dr. Vasquez." "Good. Now I need you to type exactly what I tell you. The sabotage code is hidden in your targeting computer, disguised as a navigation subroutine. We're going to find it and delete it." For the next 10 minutes, Elena guided Rodriguez through the complex process of navigating the Ghost's software systems. It was like performing surgery over the radio. One wrong command could crash the aircraft immediately instead of waiting for the sabotage to activate. Okay, Dr. Vasquez, I think I found what you're looking for. There's a file here called navsub_7742 that doesn't match the others. Elena's pulse quickened. That's it. That's the malicious code. I need you to select that file, and the radio erupted in static. Elena looked at Morrison in alarm. Ghost 1, do you copy? Captain Rodriguez, respond. After a terrifying moment of silence, Rodriguez's voice came back weak and distorted. Dr. Vasquez, I'm getting multiple system warnings. Something's wrong with the aircraft. Elena realized with horror that the sabotage code was more sophisticated than she'd thought. It wasn't just designed to activate at a specific time, it was programmed to trigger if anyone tried to tamper with it. Captain, what are your symptoms? Flight controls are becoming sluggish. Navigation system is showing conflicting readings. And Rodriguez's voice was tight with professional concern. I'm locked out of manual control. The aircraft is flying itself. Elena's mind raced. The sabotage wasn't just going to crash the Ghost, it was going to make the pilot helpless to prevent it. 18 minutes to target, Elena muttered, checking her calculations. Dr. Vasquez. Rodriguez's voice was steady despite her circumstances. If I can't regain control of this aircraft, I need to eject before it reaches the fleet. No, Elena said sharply. Captain, if you eject, the Ghost will continue on its programmed course and hit the Gerald R forward. We need you to stay with the aircraft and help me find another way to stop this. Elena turned to Morrison. Colonel, do we have any way to remotely override the Ghost's systems? Morrison shook his head grimly. The Ghost was designed to be unhackable. The only way to control it remotely would be through the command and control network, but that requires administrator access. Elena finished, which I have. Elena pulled out her phone and accessed the Blackwater server system she'd infiltrated earlier. But as she navigated through the network, she realized the problem was more complex than remote access. The Ghost's communication systems had been compromised along with everything else. Elena could send commands to the aircraft, but the sabotage code would intercept and corrupt them before they reached the flight computer. She needed a different approach. Captain Rodriguez, I need you to look for a physical override. Somewhere in the cockpit, there should be a manual emergency system that can bypass the flight computer entirely. Manual emergency system. Dr. Vasquez, are you talking about the old fly-by-wire backup? Exactly. Every military aircraft has an analog backup system for exactly this kind of situation. Can you find it? Elena could hear Rodriguez moving around the cockpit, searching for controls that were deliberately hidden and difficult to access. 15 minutes to target. Found it. Rodriguez's voice carried a note of hope. But Dr. Vasquez, the manual says this system is for emergency use only. It'll give me basic flight control, but I'll lose all navigation, targeting, and communication systems. Elena realized what this meant. If Rodriguez activated the manual override, she would regain control of the aircraft, but she would be flying blind, no GPS, no radio contact, no way to know where she was or where she was going. Captain, I need you to activate the manual override now, before the sabotage code fully takes control. But if I do that, how will I know where to go? How will I avoid the fleet? Elena looked at Morrison, then at her phone, then at the clear morning sky visible through the hangar bay doors. Captain Rodriguez, do you trust me? A pause. Ma'am, you've been talking me through this entire situation while I'm flying a sabotaged aircraft over the Pacific Ocean. At this point, trust is all I've got. Elena smiled grimly. Then activate the manual override. I'm going to guide you home. The next few minutes were tense with the sound of switches being thrown and systems being activated. Finally, Rodriguez's voice came back over the radio. Manual override activated. Dr. Vasquez, I have basic flight control, but I'm completely blind up here. You're my eyes now. Elena looked at her phone, at the tracking systems that showed the Ghost's position relative to the Pacific Fleet. The aircraft was 12 minutes from the carrier group, flying at 800 miles per hour toward a catastrophic collision. Captain, I need you to turn 15 degrees to starboard. Now. For the next 10 minutes, Elena became the Ghost's navigation system, using satellite tracking and her knowledge of the fleet's position to guide Rodriguez away from the ships and toward a safe landing site. But as they worked together, Elena realized they had another problem. "Captain, what's your fuel status?" "Low, Dr. Vasquez. The sabotage affected my fuel management systems. I've got maybe 15 minutes of flight time left." Elena's heart sank. They were running out of both time and fuel. The nearest airfield was 20 minutes away, and the Ghost was still heading toward the Pacific Fleet. That's when Elena had an idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. "Captain Rodriguez, how do you feel about landing on an aircraft carrier?" Long pause. "Mum, the Ghost wasn't designed for carrier landings. And more importantly, I'm not trained for carrier landings. The Gerald R. Ford has an experimental arrested landing system designed for stealth aircraft. If we can get you lined up correctly, the ship's systems can bring you down safely." "Dr. Vasquez, you're asking me to land an experimental aircraft with no navigation systems on a moving platform in the middle of the ocean?" Elena looked around the hangar bay at the federal agents and military personnel who were hanging on every word of her conversation with Rodriguez. She thought about Admiral Chen on the Ford, unaware that her sister had tried to murder her. She thought about the thousands of sailors who would have died if Chen's plan had succeeded. "Captain, 2 hours ago I was a janitor. Now I'm saving the world. Sometimes you have to do things that seem impossible." Rodriguez's laughter came through the radio, tinged with both fear and determination. "Well, when you put it that way, Dr. Vasquez, guide me in." Elena took a deep breath and began the most challenging navigation of her life, guiding a blind pilot in a sabotaged stealth fighter toward a landing that would either save thousands of lives or end in disaster. 5 minutes to the Gerald R. Ford, Elena announced to the room. "Captain Rodriguez, you're about to make history." "Gerald R. Ford, this is an emergency. We have an experimental aircraft inbound for emergency landing." Elena spoke into Morrison's secure radio, while simultaneously tracking the Ghost's approach on her phone. The carrier's response crackled through immediately. "Emergency aircraft. State your identity and nature of emergency." "Ford, this is Dr. Elena Vasquez, DoD Intelligence. The aircraft is the X-47 Ghost, piloted by Captain Lisa Rodriguez. The aircraft was sabotaged and is flying without navigation systems. Request immediate emergency landing clearance." A different voice came on the radio holder with unmistakable authority. "Dr. Vasquez, this is Admiral Sarah Chen. Did you say the Ghost was sabotaged?" Elena felt a chill of recognition. She was talking to the woman her sister had tried to murder. "Admiral Chen, your sister Sarah Chen, CFO of Blackwater Defense, programmed the Ghost to crash into your ship and kill you. Captain Rodriguez and I have neutralized the threat, but the aircraft needs emergency landing now." A pause that seemed to last forever. "Dr. Vasquez, the Ghost is not designed for carrier operations. Our landing systems, Admiral, with respect. I helped design those landing systems during my time at Lockheed. The Ford's arrested landing system can handle the Ghost if we approach correctly." Elena could hear activity in the background as Admiral Chen processed this information. "Very well, Dr. Vasquez. We're clearing the deck for emergency landing. Ghost pilot, this is Admiral Chen. What's your status?" Rodriguez's voice came through the radio. "Professional despite her circumstances, Admiral. I have manual flight control. Only no navigation, no communication except through ground relay, and approximately 8 minutes of fuel remaining." "8 minutes," Elena muttered, checking her calculations. "Captain, the Ford is 3 miles ahead at your current heading. You need to descend to 800 feet and reduce speed to 150 knots. Beginning descent." Rodriguez confirmed. Elena could see the Ghost on her tracking display, a tiny blip moving across the vast Pacific toward the carrier group. But she could also see something else that made her blood run cold. "Admiral Chen, you need to know something else. The sabotage at Blackwater included communications to Chinese naval forces. There may be hostile vessels in the area reacting to false intelligence. Dr. Vasquez, we've been tracking unusual Chinese naval activity for the past several hours. Are you telling me that was also part of the sabotage? Yes, Admiral. Your sister has been manipulating both sides, trying to start a war that would benefit Blackwater Defense. Elena heard Admiral Chen speaking rapidly to her staff in the background. The carrier group was not only dealing with an emergency landing, they were potentially in a combat situation based on false intelligence. Captain Rodriguez, Elena said into the radio, "You're 2 miles from the ford. Can you see the carrier?" "Negative, Dr. Vasquez. Heavy cloud cover at this altitude." Elena realized Rodriguez was flying completely blind into one of the most dangerous maneuvers in aviation, landing on a moving aircraft carrier with no navigation systems and minimal fuel. "Captain, I need you to descend to 500 feet and follow my heading corrections exactly. Any deviation could be fatal for the next 3 minutes. Elena guided Rodriguez through the final approach, her voice steady despite the impossibility of what they were attempting. She watched the Ghost's icon on her phone move closer to the Ford's position, knowing that one wrong turn would send the aircraft into the ocean. 1 mile to the Ford. Elena announced, "Captain, you should be seeing the carrier's wake now." "I see it. I see the ship." Rodriguez's voice carried relief and terror in equal measure. "Perfect, Admiral Chen. Is the landing area clear?" "Deck is clear. Rest cables are set." "Ghost pilot, you're cleared for emergency landing." Elena watched her phone screen as the Ghost approached the Ford. But something was wrong with the approach angle. "Captain, you're coming in too steep. You need to level off or you'll miss the arrest cables." "I'm trying, Dr. Vasquez, but the manual controls are sluggish. The aircraft wants to nose down." Elena realized that the sabotage had affected more than just the navigation systems. The flight controls themselves were compromised. "Captain, the sabotage may have damaged your control surfaces. You need to use engine thrust to control your descent instead of the elevator controls." "Using thrust for descent, that's going to burn my remaining fuel faster." "Do it anyway. You're 30 seconds from touchdown." Elena held her breath as she watched the Ghost's final approach. On her phone screen, she could see the aircraft's icon merging with the Ford's position. "Ghost is on final approach." Admiral Chen announced over the radio, "Looking good, looking good." Elena could imagine Rodriguez in the cockpit, fighting compromised controls to land a $2 billion aircraft on a moving platform. While flying on fumes, touchdown. Admiral Chen's voice carried relief and amazement. "Successful arrest. The Ghost is down safely." Elena collapsed against a nearby workbench. The tension of the past are finally catching up with her. Round the hangar bay, federal agents and military personnel erupted in cheers. But her relief was short-lived. Her phone was buzzing with an urgent message from Martinez. "Elena, we have a problem. Satellite intelligence shows Chinese naval forces are still approaching the Ford's position. Whatever Sarah Chen did to trigger their response, they haven't gotten the message that it was false intelligence." Elena grabbed Morrison's radio. "Admiral Chen, this is Dr. Vasquez. You need to know that Chinese naval forces may be approaching your position based on false intelligence planted by the sabotage operation." "Dr. Vasquez, we're tracking for Chinese destroyers approximately 20 miles from our position and closing. We've been trying to establish communication, but they're not responding to our attempts at diplomatic contact." Elena realized that Sarah Chen's conspiracy had succeeded in at least one of its objectives. She had manipulated both American and Chinese forces into a confrontation that could still trigger the war she wanted. "Admiral, the Chinese forces are operating under the belief that American naval assets are preparing for a preemptive strike. They're not attacking, they're defending themselves against an attack they think is coming. Then, how do we de-escalate this situation?" Elena looked at her phone, at the tracking display showing both American and Chinese naval forces converging on the same location. She thought about the complexity of Sarah Chen's plan, how it had multiple layers and backup scenarios. "Admiral, I need to talk to Captain Rodriguez. She may be the key to preventing this war." A few minutes later, Rodriguez's voice came through the radio, tired but alert. "Dr. Vasquez, thanks for getting me down safely. What can I do for you?" "Captain, the Ghost's communication systems, are they operational now that you've landed?" "Let me check." "Yes, everything seems to be working now that I'm on deck power." Elena smiled. She had an idea that was either diplomatic, genius, or complete madness. Captain, how would you feel about making history again? I need you to use the Ghost's communication systems to contact the Chinese naval forces directly. Ma'am, I'm a test pilot, not a diplomat. Captain, you're flying the most advanced stealth aircraft in the world. To the Chinese forces, the Ghost represents either a terrible threat or a gesture of unprecedented trust. Which one it represents depends on what you say to them. Elena could hear Rodriguez breathing over the radio. As she considered this, Dr. Vasquez, what exactly do you want me to say? Elena looked around the hangar bay, at the federal agents who had captured Sarah Chen, at the evidence of corporate conspiracy that would reshape defense contracting forever. Tell them the truth, Captain. Tell them that you were sabotaged by American defense contractors trying to start a war for profit. Tell them that the American government had nothing to do with the false intelligence they received. And tell them that you're trusting them with the location and vulnerability of the most advanced aircraft in the American military. The radio was silent for a long moment. Dr. Vasquez, if this works, it'll be the most important conversation in modern naval history. And if it doesn't work, Captain, we'll be at war within the hour anyway. Elena waited as Rodriguez prepared to make contact with the Chinese naval forces. In her hand, her phone showed the positions of both fleets, moving toward each other like pieces on a chessboard. The next few minutes would determine whether Elena's 2-year undercover mission would end in peace or catastrophe. Chinese naval forces. This is Captain Lisa Rodriguez, United States Air Force, calling from the X-47 Ghost aircraft aboard the USS Gerald R. I have information about the intelligence you've been receiving. Elena closed her eyes and listened as Captain Rodriguez began the most important conversation of her life. What did you think of this thrilling journey? Share your favorite moment in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss our latest tales. What kind of story would you like to hear next? The communication between Captain Rodriguez and the Chinese naval forces lasted 37 minutes. Elena listened to every word through the Ford's communication relay, her heart racing as Rodriguez methodically explained the conspiracy, the sabotage, and the false intelligence that had brought both fleets to the brink of war. The Chinese response was initially skeptical, then confused, then increasingly concerned as Rodriguez provided technical details about the Ghost systems that proved she was exactly who she claimed to be. Captain Rodriguez, the Chinese fleet commander, finally said in accented but clear English, "You are asking us to believe that American defense contractors attempted to murder an American admiral and start a war between our nations for profit." "Commander, I'm not asking you to believe anything," Rodriguez replied. "I'm offering to prove it." Dr. Elena Vasquez has documented evidence of the entire conspiracy. She's prepared to share that evidence with both American and Chinese intelligence services simultaneously. Elena stepped forward and took the radio from Morrison. "Chinese Fleet Commander, this is Dr. Elena Vasquez. I've been undercover at Blackwater Defense Technologies for 2 years, gathering evidence of illegal arms trafficking and defense contract fraud. What I discovered tonight goes far beyond corporate crime. It's an attempt to manipulate both our nations into a conflict that would devastate millions of people." Dr. Vasquez, assuming your claims are true, how do we verify this information? Elena had anticipated this question. "Commander, I'm transmitting to you the complete financial records of Sarah Chen, CFO of Blackwater Defense. You'll find evidence of payments to Chinese intermediaries, false intelligence reports designed to provoke your naval forces, and detailed plans for profiting from the war she was trying to start." Elena uploaded the files to her secure DOD server and provided the Chinese commander with access codes. She knew she was taking an enormous risk sharing classified American intelligence with a foreign military force could be considered treason, but preventing a war seemed worth the risk. 20 minutes later, the Chinese fleet commander came back. On the radio, "Dr. Vasquez, Captain Rodriguez, Admiral Chen, we have reviewed the evidence you provided. Our intelligence analysts confirm that the documents appear authentic and detailed. We are prepared to stand down our forces and return to normal patrol patterns. Elena felt a wave of relief wash over her. The immediate crisis was over, but Admiral Chen's voice carried a note of concern. Commander, what assurance do we have that this incident won't trigger larger diplomatic consequences? Admiral Chen, with your permission, I would like to request something unprecedented. My government would be very interested in speaking directly with Dr. Vasquez about her investigation. Perhaps this crisis could become an opportunity for greater cooperation between our nations in preventing corporate manipulation of military forces. Elena stared at the radio in amazement. The Chinese commander was proposing what amounted to an international intelligence sharing agreement based on her evidence. Commander, Elena said carefully, I would be honored to share my findings with Chinese intelligence services, provided that American authorities approve such cooperation. Admiral Chen looked at Morrison, who nodded slowly. Dr. Vasquez, Admiral. Chen said, as commander of the Pacific Fleet, I hereby authorize you to share your intelligence findings with Chinese naval authorities. This crisis has demonstrated that corporate threats to national security transcend national boundaries. Over the next hour, Elena found herself at the center of an impromptu international intelligence conference conducted over naval radio frequencies. She detailed the scope of Sarah Chen's conspiracy, the involvement of other defense contractors, and the sophisticated methods used to manipulate both American and Chinese military responses. The Chinese provided reciprocal intelligence about suspicious approaches they had received from various American defense companies over the past several months, approaches that now appeared to be part of a larger pattern of manipulation. By the time the sun was fully up, Elena had helped establish the framework for an unprecedented cooperation agreement between American and Chinese military intelligence services. But the personal cost was only beginning to become clear. Elena's phone buzzed with a call from Agent Martinez. Elena, we need to talk. Sarah Chen is in federal custody, but she's not the only one involved in this conspiracy. We're tracking financial connections to at least 12 other defense contractors and 3 members of Congress. How deep does this go? Elena asked. Elena, we think this conspiracy has been operating for at least 5 years. Sarah Chen wasn't the architect, she was middle management. The real organizers are still out there, and now they know you've exposed their operation. Elena felt a chill of fear. What does that mean for me? It means you're probably the most valuable intelligence asset in the country right now, and also one of the most threatened. Dodd wants to bring you in for full debriefing and protective custody. Elena looked around the hangar bay, at the federal agents processing evidence, at the ghost sitting safely on the Ford's deck visible through the radio communication, at the dawn sky that had almost witnessed the beginning of World War III. Martinez, I've been invisible for 2 years. I think I can handle staying hidden a little longer. Elena, this isn't about hiding. This is about helping us roll up the rest of the conspiracy before they can trigger another crisis. Elena realized that her undercover work was far from over. In exposing Sarah Chen, she had revealed only one tentacle of an octopus that stretched throughout the military-industrial complex. What do you need me to do? We need you to disappear, Elena. Officially, Dr. Elena Vasquez died in the explosion at Blackwater Defense Technologies. But unofficially, we need you to become someone else and go undercover again. Elena looked at her phone, at the evidence she had gathered, at the proof of corporate conspiracy that had nearly started a war. Where? Titan Aerospace, Chen's biggest competitor. We have reason to believe they're planning something even bigger than what happened tonight. Elena closed her eyes and thought about the past 2 years of her life, the careful invisibility, the patient gathering of evidence, the loneliness of living a lie. Then she thought about Captain Rodriguez, trusting her enough to land a blind aircraft on a moving ship. She thought about Admiral Chen, discovering that her own sister had tried to murder her. She thought about the thousands of sailors who were alive because Elena had chosen to act instead of staying hidden. When do I start? Your new identity documents will be ready in 6 hours. Elena Vasquez, the janitor, is about to become Dr. Maria Santos, aerospace engineer. Are you ready to save the world again? Elena smiled. Despite everything, for 2 years, she had been invisible, ignored, overlooked, but tonight, she had prevented a war and exposed a conspiracy that threatened the security of nations. Maybe being invisible was exactly what the world needed. Martinez, I'm ready. But this time, I want backup. I want communication protocols. And I want a promise that if I uncover something this big again, people will listen to me from the beginning. Done, Elena. Thank you. You've prevented something catastrophic tonight. Elena hung up the phone and walked toward the hangar bay exit. Outside, she could see federal agents loading evidence into trucks, military personnel securing the facility, and the first news crews arriving to report on what would undoubtedly be described as a training accident at a defense contractor. The truth would remain classified for decades, but Elena knew that somewhere in the Pacific, Chinese and American naval forces were returning to their bases instead of preparing for war. As she reached the exit, Elena turned back for one last look at the X-47 Ghost, sitting peacefully on the Gerald R. Ford's deck after its harrowing flight. The aircraft that was supposed to start a war had instead become a symbol of cooperation and trust. Elena smiled and walked into the sunrise, ready to disappear again, ready to become invisible again, ready to save the world again, because sometimes the most powerful people are the ones nobody notices. Dr. Maria Santos pushed her cleaning cart through the pristine corridors of Titan Aerospace, her coveralls bearing the logo of Premium Facilities Management. To the engineers and executives hurrying past her, she was just another maintenance worker, invisible and insignificant. But in her cart, hidden beneath cleaning supplies and maintenance equipment, was some of the most sophisticated surveillance equipment the DoD had ever developed. And in her mind was the complete financial structure of Titan Aerospace, the personnel files of every employee, and growing evidence of another conspiracy that made Sarah Chen's plot look simple. By comparison, Elena now Maria had discovered that Titan Aerospace was developing more than just aircraft. They were developing a new kind of war, one fought not with weapons, but with information, manipulation, and the careful orchestration of global conflict. Her phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Martinez. Santos, we're tracking unusual activity in the server room tonight. Multiple executives working late. Recommend investigation. Elena smiled and checked her watch. 11:30 p.m., just like at Blackwater. The most important conversations happened when the building was supposed to be empty. She adjusted her cleaning cart and headed toward the executive wing, her reflection in the polished floor showing a tired woman in coveralls with calloused hands and tired eyes. But her reflection lied. Elena Vasquez was many things: mid-graduate, aerospace engineer, undercover intelligence operative, and the woman who had prevented World War III. But most importantly, she was invisible. And in a world where corporate conspiracies threatened global security, invisibility was the most powerful weapon of all. Elena pushed her cart toward the executive wing, ready to uncover whatever new plot Titan Aerospace was hatching. Because 6 months ago, she had learned something important. Sometimes the janitor they ignore today is the hero who saves tomorrow. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as she disappeared into the shadows. Just another maintenance worker cleaning up other people's messes. But this time, she was cleaning up messes that could reshape the world. Elena smiled as she approached the executive conference room, where voices were already echoing through the thin walls. The game was beginning again, and this time, she was ready. Elena Vasquez would return in the algorithm they couldn't break. How a night shift IT worker stopped digital Armageddon. Like this story, the invisible heroes are all around us: the janitors, the security guards, the maintenance workers who see everything and say nothing, until the moment when saying something saves the world. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever noticed something important that others missed? What would you do if you discovered a conspiracy that threatened thousands of lives? Don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, because sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one nobody sees coming.